Hi, I'm Ron Quint. So you're headed to the Boston Wine Expo this year. Great. Should you sample everything in sight, or should you come up with a strategy of just tasting whites, reds, sparkling wines, and maybe a little bit of everything else? What's your plan? Why don't we start with you, Noon?
Well, you know, for sparkling wine, there are so many different options out there that you can try at the Boston Wine Expo. Not only do you have your Prosecco, your usual cava, but you have sparkling Shiraz from Australia, and you have some really fun sects coming out of Germany.
And let's not forget New York State.
And let's not forget South Africa.
Okay, very good. We're even. So what about sweeter wines? You know, those ports, those sherries. You know, is there an approach that you would have for that too?
So we are going to go into the category of fortified wines. You know, port sherries. You can try the drier style of wine. You can try the sweeter style of wine. But why not go over to the grease table to try some Rosina? It's fun. It's delicious.
I have to say, one year at the Boston Wine Expo, you know, the Greek table wound up being my favorite, and I would have never expected that. So that's really great insight. So we're on to reds for Michael, and Michael, there are a lot of red wines. So where do you start?
As an American wine drinking culture, I think we actually, in general, lean towards red wines. So I know a lot of people will probably be focused only on reds. Maybe you have a Saturday and a Sunday ticket, and Saturday you devote to white wines, which Nick, you'll talk about, and Sunday you're devoting to red wines. But how do you approach this wide world of red wines? And for me, I'm going to approach it in terms of body. You know, what's the tannin structure? How am I going to build upon each wine that I've just tasted? So I'm going to try to start off with something really light and bodied. Oh, barely even a red wine, really. Maybe it's even just, you know, it might be considered a really dark rosé. You know, don't poo-poo the rosés whatsoever, because it's a great place to start if you're tasting red wines. But something like a Beaujolais, Gamay, moving into Pinot Noir, your structure is going to be generally a little bit lighter, going to be a little bit more elegant. The tannins aren't going to be really big. We have a problem with actually processing kind of tannins. You know, tannins build upon themselves. If you're not eating something along with the wine, the tannins are going to build and build and build and build. And really, it's not easy to get rid of them. Water doesn't do it on its own. So have some crackers, have a bite of cheese. That'll help to cleanse your palate of the tannins. If you start off with something like Cabernet Sauvignon, and I'm not saying this is right or wrong, but if you start off with a big tannic Napa Valley Cabernet, and then you go to try to taste a more austere, leaner Pinot Noir or Trousseau or something from the Jura or Northern Italy, you're not going to get as great of experience out of it, because your palate is so tired by those tannins that you've tasted with the Cabernet that it's not going to be able to pick up on the nuances of the Pinot Noir, of these other more delicate grape varietals. So try to scale yourself so you're starting with the lightest bodied wine. Work your way up. Move up in terms of body and texture. If you want to jump ahead, if you want to go to something like a Zinfandel or a Merlot or a Malbec, absolutely. But then give your palate a chance to kind of, you know, relax for a couple of minutes. Take a walk, have a sip of water, go find one of the great food vendors that are there, have a bite of cheese, some crackers, some bread, go see one of the great chefs on stage, take a break, and then you can go back and basically reset your palate and start over again. So if you're not going to kind of go from lightest to fullest, you know, again, there's no right or wrong answer, but find something that you like and that your approach works, and then you can kind of have a more enjoyable experience.
Well, that's a great idea, because I know for one thing, this year's Expo is going to feature a lot more food pairings. So you want to take advantage of that. And yeah, certainly if you're going and say, like, for example, a Pinot Noir, then maybe a Grenache, building up to, let's say, a Shiraz or a Cabernet Sauvignon, something a little bit more heavier, you won't exhaust yourself in the process, and you'll get a lot more out of the experience that way.
Absolutely.
Right.
And kind of generally speaking, save your New World wines, save your California, your Argentina, your Australian wines for later on in the day. One, they tend to pack a little bit more of a punch in terms of alcohol, so it'll tire you out quicker. European wines generally have a little bit lower alcohol, so if you start with those and work your way towards the heavier wines towards the end of the day, you'll be able to enjoy more wines. And that's kind of one of the big, benefits of this, is that you have 2,000 wines to taste. If you're tired out after wine 10, you're not going to enjoy those wines after that.
Nick, what's your strategy for white wine?
When you look at white wines, you have wines that can be very, very high in acid, you have wines that can be very, very high in sugar, and you have wines that can be very, very high in oak. So generally what I like to do is start at those more medium-bodied wines, not anything that spikes, any of those things that really spike. So you could, go for some Italian whites, things like that to begin with, and then slowly move up, move into your New Worlds and your fruity wines, and then move into your sweeter wines that can sometimes be very high in acid, specifically the German wines. And then finally go into wines that are very, very oaky. But there's a trick that I learned a long time ago, which is your palate can get very, very tired when especially if you're not used to tasting a lot of wines. Even after wine number 10, you can get a little bit tired. And what I really like to do is if I'm tasting, some really, really, high acid wines that are just, incredibly high in acid, if I'm at the Chablis table and I'm tasting all Chablis, if for a moment you realize that your palate is really getting fatigued, not only take a step away, have some water, have some food, but you can at times go and try something else, because maybe a little touch of champagne or a little touch of, something sparkling, or a little touch of even a sweet German Riesling when you're drinking Chablis will get something different on your palate and will kind of wake your palate back up again. The same exact thing can happen with your nose. When you smell a particular scent, you start losing that scent. You start losing the ability, and the same exact thing can happen with wines. So as long as you have a plan and go forward, you really can have a great experience at the Wine Expo.
Nick, those were some great insights. Thank you. The other thing you can do too, simply, is just go by the color. If you take a light to dark color approach, this can also accomplish the same things we were just talking about, going from that lighter to that more full-bodied red, white, or sparkling wine, or dessert wine. Well, thank you again. I'm Ron Quint, and we hope you have a fantastic experience at the Boston Wine Expo.